The sun was hiding behind the tall buildings of the city, tinting the sky in shades of gold and pink. On the 20th floor of an imposing skyscraper, Julia Rodriguez, a successful and respected businesswoman, was just finishing reviewing reports before leaving. With her tailored suit perfectly pressed and her hair pulled back in an elegant bun, she exuded an imposing presence. Behind that facade of success and determination, however, Julia hid a secret longing. Every day, as she moved gracefully through the halls of the building, her gaze would wander to Juan Carlos, the cleaning employee. Juan Carlos, a man with humble features and a kind smile, was dedicated to keeping the facilities spotless in the shadows of the night. Although Julia and Juan Carlos had crossed paths on numerous occasions, they had never exchanged more than a polite greeting. Yet something in their gazes revealed a special connection, a spark of desire that neither dared to admit. Each fleeting encounter left Julia yearning for more, consumed by the fire of a forbidden love. One night, as Julia worked late in her office, she noticed a respite and strolled through the empty hallways. The dim lights and silences of the night brought her a sense of peace, but also awakened her deepest thoughts. Curiosity and desire drove her to venture beyond her usual surroundings and into Juan Carlos' domain. The soft sound of a broom brushing the floor reached her ears as she approached one of the storage rooms. He followed the sound, and there he saw him, in the dim light of a solitary lamp. Juan Carlos was absorbed in his work, oblivious to Julia's presence. His gaze was fixed on the floor, but Julia could feel his heart beating fast. Julia's heart was pounding as she crept closer to Juan Carlos. A mixture of fear and excitement invaded her, but the attraction was too intense to resist. With trembling hands, she gently caressed Juan Carlos' shoulder, and he turned, surprised. Time stood still as their gazes met. In that instant, everything around them disappeared, and only the two of them existed. Julia could see the gleam of desire in Juan Carlos' eyes, and knew he shared her same feelings. Without saying a word, they embraced, melting into a passionate embrace. Minutes were captured in eternity as Julia and Juan Carlos surrendered to the love they had kept secret. The pent-up desire was released in every caress, in every stolen kiss. In that small forgotten corner of the building, their hearts met in perfect synchrony. After that first furtive meeting, Julia and Juan Carlos promised to meet again in secret. The empty corridors and the shadows of the night intensified into silent witnesses of their passionate love. Each encounter fueled the fire that burned within them, but also reminded them of the painful reality of their situation. Julia lived tormented by the fear of being discovered and facing the consequences. She knew that her reputation and her position in the company were at stake, but the love she felt for Juan Carlos was so intense that she could not ignore it. Juan Carlos, on the other hand, struggled with the social rift that separated them and the fear of being rejected by his peers if their romance came to light. As their clandestine love grew stronger, the challenge of keeping it a secret became more difficult. Each encounter was an act of bravery and risked their professional lives. However, Julia and Juan Carlos were willing to face all obstacles to live this forbidden love. Thus began their story, in a skyscraper where success and passion were intertwined in a furtive and secret romance. Neither of them could foresee the challenges ahead, but they were determined to fight for their love, no matter what consequences they might face. The love between Julia and Juan Carlos grew with each furtive encounter, but so did the burden they carried on their backs. The weight of secrecy was becoming increasingly difficult to bear, and their desire to share their love with the world was intensifying. Julia found herself in her plush office, absorbed in thought as she gazed out the window at the skyscrapers rising into the sky. She knew she could no longer hide her relationship with Juan Carlos, but the fear of repercussions haunted her. What would her colleagues, her employees, and, most importantly, her superiors say? That afternoon, Julia called a meeting with her trusted assistant, Laura. She was a smart and perceptive woman, and Julia knew she had to face the situation head-on. Laura entered the office, a look of curiosity and unease in her eyes. "What's wrong, Julia?" asked Laura with a tone of concern. Julia cleared her throat before answering, fighting the nerves that threatened to betray her. "Laura, I need to talk to you about something important," she began. "What I'm going to tell you must stay between us. It's a secret I can't keep any longer." Laura's expression changed to a mixture of surprise and confusion. "Of course, Julia. You can trust me. What's wrong?" Julia took a deep breath and decided to be honest. "Laura, I have a relationship with someone in this building. Someone who doesn't belong to the same social or professional circle as I do," she confessed, as the weight of her words fell on her shoulders. Laura's face reflected disbelief. "A relationship? But, Julia, what will happen to your reputation, your image? This could affect your position in the company." Julia nodded sadly, aware of the implications of her revelation. "I know it's risky, Laura, but I can't ignore my feelings. This love is genuine and passionate, but I also know it is a secret and forbidden love." Laura was silent for a moment, processing the information. Finally, I looked at Julia with a sympathetic look. "Julia, I understand that hearts don't always obey the rules. While I can't deny that this takes me by surprise, I have always admired you for your bravery and dedication. If this is what truly makes you happy, I will be here to support you." Laura's words were a balm to Julia. Knowing she had someone to confide in, someone who would not judge her, gave her strength to keep going. "Thank you, Laura. It means a lot to me to count on you." From that moment on, Julia felt a gradual relief in her heart. She knew she had Laura on her side, an ally in this secret love. The decision to share their truth with someone they trusted gave them some respite, but also increased the urgency to face reality and make difficult decisions. Deep inside, Julia and Juan Carlos knew that their story could not remain hidden indefinitely. They had to find a way to navigate the turbulent waters of a forbidden love and discover if there was a possible future for them beyond the secret that enveloped them. The next step would confront the obstacles that would confront them and decide if they were willing to risk everything for the love they would share. Together, they began to map out a plan to reveal their romance to the world, no matter what consequences they might face. The decision to reveal their love to others filled Julia and Juan Carlos with a mixture of excitement and fear. They knew the challenge ahead would be arduous, but they were willing to face it together, no matter the consequences. Julia called a meeting with her management team to address an important issue. The expectant faces of her colleagues reflected curiosity as they waited for her to speak. With determination, Julia began to share her truth. "I want to talk to you about a personal issue that has been coming up for me for some time," Julia began. "I have been involved in a romantic relationship with someone in this building, and that someone is Juan Carlos, our janitor." A wave of murmurs and surprise swept through the room. Julia's eyes sought support in the gaze of Juan Carlos, who remained beside her, demonstrating his commitment to her love. "I understand that this may be unexpected and challenging for some of you," Julia continued, "but I want you to know that my relationship with Juan Carlos has not and will not affect my commitment and dedication to this company. My desire is to maintain transparency and integrity in all areas of my life." Reactions varied among team members. Some showed support and understanding, while others escaped whispers of disapproval. It was clear that the news had shaken the foundations of the company and challenged established social and professional norms. Laura's voice rose in the room, breaking the awkward silence. "As Julia's assistant, you have witnessed her dedication and professional skills over the years. Julia's personal relationship should not influence our perception of her competence and leadership." Her words were met with applause and sentiment from some of the team members. Julia felt a lump in her throat, touched by the unexpected support. It was a small ray of hope in the midst of uncertainty. After the meeting, Julia and Juan Carlos faced the comments and questioning looks that followed. However, they were determined not to let the judgment and disapproval affect them. Their love was strong, and they were willing to face any challenge to be together. Over time, Julia and Juan Carlos' story began to fade into the day-to-day business of the company. As others got used to the idea and saw that their relationship did not affect their work performance, acceptance gradually made its way in. Julia and Juan Carlos continued to face challenges, but they also found support from unexpected people. Some employees began to see beyond appearances and appreciated the authenticity and courage of their love. The story of a successful businesswoman and her janitor became a reminder that love can overcome social and professional barriers. Although their path was still filled with uncertainty, Julia and Juan Carlos knew they had made the right decision in facing their forbidden love. Together, they would walk into the future, no matter what challenges awaited them, confident in the power of love and the strength of their union. After revealing their love and facing the initial challenges, Julia and Juan Carlos found themselves at a crucial point in their story. They had withstood the trial and were beginning to find support and understanding from some of their coworkers. Now, it was time to make a plan to build a future together, free from the restrictions imposed by their work and social situation. Julia began to call a meeting with the company's managers, those who had the power to make decisions that could change their destinies. She was confident that, by demonstrating her commitment and professionalism, she could persuade them that their love did not affect their ability to fulfill their roles in the organization. In the boardroom, Julia sat across from the managers, with Juan Carlos at her side, showing their unity and determination. She took a deep breath and began to state her case. Understanding that my relationship with Juan Carlos has caused controversy and concern within the company, Julia began in a firm voice. However, I want to reiterate my commitment to this organization and my intention to continue to lead with integrity and excellence. One by one, Julia addressed the concerns and objections raised by the managers. She explained how her love did not affect her ability to make unbiased decisions or fulfill her responsibilities. She cited specific examples of successful projects led by her during the time her relationship with Juan Carlos had begun. As Julia spoke, she noticed a change in the attitude of some of the managers. Initial hesitation was being replaced by an openness to consider her situation from a more human perspective. Finally, the CEO of the company took the floor. His eyes reflected seriousness and reflection. "Julia, we understand the importance of transparency and trust in our organization," he said. "We appreciate your candor and your commitment to your work. We will take your words into consideration and evaluate this situation fairly." The road to freedom was not completely clear, but Julia and Juan Carlos had taken the first step toward change. Now, they could only wait and trust that their dedication and achievements would speak for themselves. The next few days were tense for Julia and Juan Carlos. The wait filled them with anxiety and made them question whether they had made the right decision in revealing their love. However, they supported each other and found comfort in their special connection. One day, Julia received a call from the CEO, requesting an urgent meeting. With her heart pounding, she headed to the top executive's office. Juan Carlos accompanied her in silence, giving her unconditional support. As Julia entered the CEO's office, she noticed a smile on the face of the man in front of her. "Julia, we have evaluated your situation and have come to a conclusion," the CEO announced in a firm but kind voice. "We recognize your commitment and your accomplishments within the company. And while this relationship poses challenges, we have decided to support your choice." A surge of relief and gratitude invaded Julia's heart. It was a moment of victory for their love, a sign that they were one step closer to the freedom they longed for. The CEO continued, "Julia, we understand that your relationship with Juan Carlos is something precious to you. As a company, we want to support you in your happiness and in respecting your personal rights." Julia could barely contain her excitement. This was the opportunity they had been waiting for, the chance to build a future together without restrictions. She thanked the CEO for his understanding and promised to continue to demonstrate her dedication and professionalism at work. As they left the CEO's office, Julia and Juan Carlos hugged each other with tears of joy. Finally, they were on the road to the freedom they had longed for. Now, they could unleash their love without fear of the professional and social consequences that had previously bound them. With their love accepted and supported by the company, Julia and Juan Carlos began to build a life together. They no longer had to hide or live in secret. They could walk proudly and defy the expectations and barriers imposed by society. Their passionate and secret love had become a transformational force, proving that the heart does not understand social differences or pre-established norms. Together, Julia and Juan Carlos would face any challenge the future would bring, trusting in the power of their love to overcome any obstacle and find the happiness they so richly deserved. Julia and Juan Carlos plunged into a new stage of their lives, where their love was no longer restricted by secrets or prejudices. As their relationship became more public, they found support from friends and colleagues who had witnessed their courage and commitment. Together, they began to explore the possibilities offered by an unrestricted future. One sunny afternoon, Julia and Juan Carlos were strolling through the park, holding hands and sharing laughter and confidences. They had decided to take a step further in their relationship and begin to build a life together outside of work. They talked about moving to a new home, where they could create a space full of love and freedom. The idea of living together excited and scared them in equal parts. They knew they would face challenges in their daily lives, but they were also confident that their love was strong enough to overcome any obstacles. With the support of their friends and colleagues, Julia and Juan Carlos found a beautiful apartment in a quiet part of the city. It was a place where they could begin to build their own refuge, away from prying eyes and judgments. As they settled into their new home, Julia and Juan Carlos enjoyed a freedom and intimacy they had never experienced before. Every corner of the apartment was filled with their love and their essence. Together, they created a space where they could be themselves without restrictions or fears. In their daily life, Julia and Juan Carlos learned to find the balance between their personal relationship and their work. Julia strived to maintain professionalism in her role as leader of the company, while Juan Carlos found satisfaction in his work and in the personal growth he experienced. Despite the challenges they faced, Julia and Juan Carlos never let the obstacles jeopardize their love. Together, they found ways to overcome difficulties and strengthen their relationship day by day. They learned to communicate openly and honestly, to support each other in difficult moments and to celebrate shared joys and achievements. Over time, the passionate and secret love between Julia, the successful businesswoman, and Juan Carlos, the janitor, became a story of inspiration and hope. Their love defied social and professional boundaries, proving that the heart cannot be controlled or silenced by external conventions. The road they had traveled together was not an easy one, but it was worth every obstacle overcome. Julia and Juan Carlos found themselves in the process, discovering the true meaning of love and courage. Their story became a testament that true love can blossom in the most unexpected places and overcome any barrier that comes its way. And so, Julia and Juan Carlos continued their journey, living their love with passion and authenticity, inspiring others to follow their hearts and pursue happiness no matter the circumstances. Their story would live on as a reminder that love, when real and deep, has the power to transform lives and defy all limitations imposed by the world. Time passed, and Julia and Juan Carlos lived a life full of love, growth, and success. Together, they faced life's ups and downs, built a family, and forged a solid relationship based on trust and mutual support. In the workplace, Julia continued to stand out as respected and admired. Her relationship with Juan Carlos was no longer a topic of conversation, but an accepted and normalized part of her life. The company had become a more inclusive and diverse place, where personal relationships were no longer grounds for discrimination. Juan Carlos, for his part, had grown professionally and had become a cleaning supervisor. His dedication and work ethic were recognized by all, and his story of self-improvement inspired other employees in the company. The couple also found satisfaction in their family life. They had 2 children, who grew up in a home full of love and solid values. Julia and Juan Carlos taught them the importance of being authentic, pursuing their dreams and loving without restrictions. As the years passed, Julia and Juan Carlos realized that their love story had an impact beyond their own lives. They began to use their experience to advocate for equality and respect in the workplace, working with organizations and sharing their story at conferences and events. The passionate and secret love that had once united them had now become a platform to promote change and acceptance in society. Julia and Juan Carlos became advocates for diversity and love without barriers, inspiring others to follow their own hearts and challenge established norms. As they grew older together, Julia and Juan Carlos reflected on their lives and the road they had traveled. They were grateful for every moment shared and every challenge overcome. They knew that their love was a precious gift and that they had been fortunate to find it. And so, with silver hair and the wrinkles of time marking their faces, Julia and Juan Carlos found peace and satisfaction in a life well lived. Their story had been a roller coaster of emotions, but they had always been united, facing every challenge with courage and unwavering love. In their last breath, Julia and Juan Carlos looked at each other, recording all the moments they had shared. They knew their love would transcend time and space, leaving a legacy of courage and hope for future generations. And so, their story came to an end, but also to a new beginning. The love that was once passionate and secret had become an eternal flame that would never be extinguished. Julia and Juan Carlos proved that true love knows no boundaries and can change the world. And their story would continue to inspire others, reminding them that love is the most precious gift we can find in this life.